I've been having camera issues the last couple weeks. For some reason, every time I go to Riverside, it makes me reboot, and the first reboot doesn't do anything. I have to reboot twice.
Hey, this is common with men above the age of 50, Jay. This is a common thing.
I can't get my camera up.
Jay, didn't you work for Microsoft?
Yeah, and what I learned working at Microsoft is sometimes you have to reboot twice.
Welcome to Drunk Real Estate. Grab a drink and enjoy the show.
Hey there, welcome to episode 92 of Drunk Real Estate. I am Kyle Wilson, Ashley Wilson's husband. And tonight, along with my two favorite co-hosts, we have a very special guest with us. And again, if you remember, there was this AI created intro. We had the song a couple episodes ago, and we found out it was created by a fellow real estate investor, actually, named Robb Almy, who specialize in all things AI, along with investing in single family, commercial, STRs, syndications. Robb is also an AI certified consultant. So we are super excited to pick his brain about all things AI. How's it going, Robb?
It's going great, Kyle. It's great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I know you guys had a couple of different choices when it came to getting somebody to fill in for Mauricio, and it came down to me and Kenny McElroy. So I appreciate you guys picking me over Kenny, but he'll be all right. He's got a few properties to take care of and a great conference that he puts on. So, hey, thanks for having me on.
I've heard of that guy before.
It's a good reminder to all of our listeners that we can be bribed. So do stuff for us, give us free stuff, and who knows, you may end up as a guest on the show.
We are not below it.
Yeah, let me just say, Robb has been for like a year now. He just sends me some like AI tips. So if a new technology comes out that I haven't tried, like he sent me something that's helped with the newsletter, make the newsletter more automated. He sent me tips on ChatGPT and how to use it. And so he has been tremendously helpful to me with AI stuff. So I know he's going to be tremendously valuable for our audience as well.
Well, that's the idea. I've been slacking on the AI stuff. We got into the VAs pretty early, so I keep telling myself, "Oh, VAs, like that's AI can't be quite better than a VA." But we'll see. Maybe Robb will prove me wrong. AJ, how's it going, man? Oh wait, hold on. Robb, you drinking? You bring something to drink for us?
Well, I had really thought about getting the Pisco out in honor of Mauricio, but I'm actually going to join with AJ and be the designated driver today. I have my Hi-O, which is a social tonic filled with adaptogens, botanicals. It is 30 calories. It's minus 80 proof. But
let me ask you a question. Does it have sugar or carbs?
Let me look.
Either way,
it does have 5 grams of sugar.
Okay, so it's not quite as good as clear, but if you're looking for the non-alcoholic, it looks like a close second.
And hey, I'm 2 in already, so you guys better watch out.
No, I got to catch up. Well, apparently I got to drink twice as much just to even out the podcast. AJ, how's it going, man?
It's going good. I, as always, have my red Solo cup with Diet Coke. As the Robb mentioned, the designated driver here. So it's nice to have you, Robb, and I'm glad to have another designated driver with me. It's good I'm not alone.
Red Solo cup. All right. I've been waiting, I've been holding off a little bit. I thought about not even introing Jay today because I don't want to hear it. About 6 weeks ago, Jay made this prediction that last week the economy was going to blow up. We're going to have a recession and all this stuff. And he made this prediction. And sure as shit, what happens? Last week, all hell breaks loose. The stock market drops by 10%. Jay's just sitting there grinning, making comments all week about this. So here you go, Jay. Here's your opportunity right now to point out to everybody about, go back and listen to episode whatever when I said it, and it did happen. So here you go. Go ahead.
No, I'm not going to gloat. I actually, the big prediction I made was that it was all going to culminate in a really bad jobs report last Friday. And so I was expecting that today I'd be doing an economic update and talking about like the February jobs, or I'm sorry, the March jobs report, where like we saw hundreds of thousands of federal layoffs and private. It wasn't. It was actually a good jobs report. And so I was right about the market collapsing, but it had nothing to do with the reason why I thought it was. I guess I got a little bit lucky, but I'm not going to admit that publicly.
Damn it, I can't believe you just went the humble route there. I had a
Now we have nothing to argue. We all had our arguments ready to go on why it doesn't count, and now it's like, okay, no, good job. We can't like. You already took that away from us, so now we can only congratulate
Jay. Just gloat for a little bit so I can do my bit.
We can jump in.
Yeah, I want. Okay. I had a whole thing prepared. I want to hear you gloat and say that how you were right.
Then let me gloat. If anybody had listened to me and taken every penny they had and put it on like the bet that I told you to make, you'd be filthy rich right now.
Wait. Hold that thought, Jay. Our switchboard's lighting up. We got callers coming in left and right. I feel like we have to cut to one of our callers right now. Caller number one. What do you want to say? You're live on Drunk Real Estate.
Oh my God. Is this the Drunk Real Estate Pod, the number one real estate podcast on the planet? Just wanted to call in to say that Jay's taking a victory lap is a crock of BS. You can't predict a recession based on a terrible jobs report on April 4th when the jobs report comes out better than expected. Yes, we are most likely in a recession. I think we're actually in a recession, but we've been talking about recessions even before last weekend. The Atlanta Fed obviously has been giving us a negative GDP, but hey, no victory laps, my friend. Love you. Great having lunch with you today. But if the jobs report is better than expected, how in the world can you take a victory lap?
Wow, great. That is a great point, caller. Thank you for coming in. We appreciate the call. Yeah, that was a great caller. It was the first thing. I got this whole new setup now. Callers can call in. I'm not giving out the phone number though. It's only a special few people. But anyway, you ruined that. I had it all queued up. It was going to be hilarious, and you just ruined it.
Sorry about that. I did have lunch with Mauricio. I had lunch with Mauricio and his family today, so he's not here, but I did get to see Mauricio, and he bought me a lot of sushi for lunch. So it was. I'm not going to be mad at Mauricio right now.
Apparently, lunch with you is a higher priority than doing our podcast. Yeah, exactly.
We're a little hurt here. Like,
kidding.
We feel a little shunned where you get to go out and get Mauricio and sushi, everything else like that. 2 hours later, he's too good for us. We see how it is.
I'm actually a little bummed that Mauricio's not here because you haven't asked me what I'm drinking yet. But I'm
just about to do that. I wanted to do my skit first. What are you drinking, Jay?
I wanted to show it off to Mauricio. It's something I didn't get at Costco. I'm drinking a bottle of Pinot Noir from J Winery. So J Pinot Noir. It's a 2015, which you're probably thinking, ooh, 10 years old, good vintage. Actually, Pinot only lasts about 5 years, so it's probably going to be crappy. But I'm drinking the J Pinot tonight.
So, and I'm sure you didn't buy it for yourself either.
I did. I bought it. We went to California about 10 years ago, and I bought a bunch of bottles of J. I bought a bunch of bottles of Chase. There's a Chase winery. That's one of my sons. And I bought a bunch of bottles of Cade, which is the name of my other son. And there's a Cade winery. And on the bright side, the J winery is really cheap. Chase and Cade both make good wine, and I think I spent way too much on those. But got the whole family except for Carol. There's no Carol winery, so if anybody out there wants to start a winery, please call it Carol. I'll spend a lot of money.
Well, the things we do for our kids, AJ. All right, we ready to get into this? Talk some AI?
Let's do it.
Because on previous shows, we've referenced how AI is changing the way we do business and shifting the economy, but we've never really gone deeper into how AI is changing real estate investing. Well, luckily today we have Robb with us to help us out, sort through some of this AI noise that everyone hears. Everyone was talking about AI until I don't know what happened. January, it was right around the end of January, something happened that everyone stopped talking about it. But luckily, Robb's going to help us figure out what we need to be paying attention to. So Robb, welcome to the program. Fill us in, buddy.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it. Let's look. November the 30th, 2022, we woke up and the world changed. Whether we knew the world had changed or whether we didn't know the world had changed, the world had indeed changed, because that marked the opening of ChatGPT by OpenAI. And that has had such a profound effect on everything in our world, not just real estate investing, but every industry has been touched. It's all been touched in a significant way. It's been a seismic shift in many different ways. And so I wanted to just highlight two things, I think, two big implications of AI and real estate investing. And I think it's important for us as real estate investors to keep these things in mind. The first thing with real estate investing in AI is that AI has the power to be a strong deflationary force. Now, I'm sure in the show we're going to start talking about tariffs, and there's going to be a lot of conversation about how tariffs are going to cause inflation. For the past couple of years, we've been having these inflation conversations. AI is actually going to be a deflationary force. What we have seen over history is that anytime there's a new technology that emerges, it always has a deflationary effect.
And just to jump in real quick, when you say deflationary, you're specifically referring to the fact that it's going to drive the price of stuff down. What stuff are you talking about?
Well, I think it's going to drive the price of a lot of stuff down. So let's talk about, any type of business that is using AI is going to be able to save on the employment side of the equation. Okay, that's going to allow them to then lower prices of goods or services. And so across the board, it's going to drive different prices down in terms of the deflation. It's kind of like if you think about back to, laptops. When the first laptops came out, they cost $1,500 just for the basic one. It weighed 22 pounds. And you had to lug it around. Now you can go to Best Buy and get a laptop for $450 that will do.
Or Costco.
Or Costco, right?
Yeah, that's the one that Jay definitely got, because every time he tries to log in, he's got to restart his computer.
Right. Same thing with televisions. Used to cost $1,200 for a great TV. Now you can go to Walmart or Costco and get them for $350. And they'll do well for you. And so here's the thing with AI, is that AI right now, as we talk, is the worst it's ever going to be. It's only going to get faster. It's only going to get cheaper. It's only going to be more productive as we go through. And so this will have that deflationary aspect, which will be great if we're fighting inflation or, God forbid, stagflation. And it's going to be very.
And when you say worst, you just mean and how it's able to do, not necessarily morally the worst it's ever going to be, right?
I'm talking about the worst technologically in terms of
when it enslaves us. I feel like that might be the worst it'll be.
Well, hopefully we'll put some parameters around that as time goes by. I think we don't have to worry about that for a little while. But
so let me stop before we jump into whatever the next is. Or I don't know, maybe you're going to talk more about deflationary, but here's something that terrifies me. As a real estate investor, as a consumer, we hate inflation. Inflation means things get more expensive. Our cars get more expensive. Our food gets more expensive. College gets more expensive. But as a real estate investor, it also means that rents go up and the value of assets go up. And all of us on this show often talk about the fact that the nicest thing about real estate is it's an inflation hedge. It keeps up with inflation. As inflation goes up, it pulls real estate values up with it. If AI is going to be deflationary, does that mean that we're all screwed as real estate investors because it's going to drag down real estate values if real estate tends to kind of follow inflation?
I think you have to live on the edge of that coin. So on one side of the inflation coin, inflation is a positive thing for real estate investors in many respects. I think about inflation-induced debt destruction, whereby if we're borrowing at a rate that's less than inflation, we can pay back that money in cheaper dollars as we go, or rents go up and that type of thing. But on the other side of that coin as well, when we're able to control inflation, while there's not a direct correlation between the federal funds rate and what we are paying for the cost to borrow money, in general, the cost of borrowing money is going to be cheaper when there's less inflation. And so thinking about where leverage plays a part in amplifying our returns, keeping inflation in check, and that particular part of AI doing that and being deflationary, I think will be a positive aspect to all of that.
We've kind of seen, like, when we say it's going to lead to deflation, I get the premise behind that, but also it does seem that in the beginning with the new technology, like, a lot of people are spending a lot of money on this stuff, right? Like, they're like, if you just see the hardware race that began kind of until DeepSeek slowed it down a little bit, like, people were spending a lot of money on that, and it was creating a lot of jobs too, and it was driving up like at that time, I wouldn't say it's directly related to it, but the how much people were getting for jobs was a lot as well. And like, it was, I wouldn't say that was deflationary. So I guess, do we have to wait for this to kind of become more or less a stable technology than a rapidly growing technology? Because we're still on the point where, like, I'll see something that it'll get offered for $5,000 for a service for AI, and then 8 weeks later it'll be a tenth of that. Like, that's how quickly some of these AI programs are and services are growing. Do we have to kind of wait for that to play itself out before we really see this trickle down into a deflationary aspect, or is it already happening?
Yeah, I think I would liken it more to kind of a like cooking in a crock pot versus cooking in a microwave in terms of its effect. I think it's going to take some time to work through, as you know, we're really at the very early adoption. I mean, even a lot of companies have not adopted AI in any significant manner. And as they begin to adopt that, as they begin to learn that, then I think what you're going to see is more of that deflationary effect across the board. But I think it's going to be a little while. I don't think it's going to be right away. But take tools that are even available now. For instance, there's a tool called HeyGen out there. And what HeyGen does is you can record yourself for 2 minutes, makes an avatar of you. And then you type in what you want to say, and your avatar says it. Now, it used to take somebody 3 hours of filming to do that. Now you've just saved 3 hours of your time. You saved the amount of money that you were going to pay a videographer to be there, somebody to edit that, and bam, you have that for your social media or for whatever. That's just one small example of, a way to save money and to cut costs and ultimately to be deflationary in a real practical sense.
You're reading through those terms and conditions real closely.
The thing that scares me, though, it's deflationary, but it also takes away a lot of competitive edge. I mean, one of the things that gives businesses a competitive edge is their IP, their intellectual property, and AI is making it so that, like, if anybody can create videos or great videos, if anybody can write content without actually writing it themselves, if they can just go to a tool and have it write great content that drives business to them, it's going to be hard to differentiate ourselves. So things get cheaper, but it gets cheaper and easier for everybody, not just us.
Sure, there's definitely what I refer to as the democratization that is happening, where I couldn't do any of this stuff before. I wasn't capable of doing that. I didn't have either the funds or the knowledge or the expertise to do it. And now what AI is allowing me to do, it's leveling that playing field. And so now, for instance, talking about real estate investing, if I want to go explore a market, I can use deep research on ChatGPT to go and do that. Whereas it would have been the big institutionals that were able to do that before, and not me, mom and pop investor or, low level investor. And so now I have that capability to do that. So there's that democratization that has gone on, that has leveled the playing field in some ways. And so I see that as a positive.
Unless you're AJ, and who is not one of the big players, but he's definitely like right there mid-size in the self-storage world, if not larger than mid-size. And so he's got a lot of people below him. So leveling the playing field is actually bad for people like AJ, who is, again, maybe not the BlackRock or Blackstone, whatever the one does real estate, but certainly bigger than a whole lot of people out there. AJ, how is this gonna like impact your business when smaller investors can come along and basically just play in your sandbox without having the same experience and IP that you've built through your team?
You know, it's interesting because it drops these barriers of entry as far as operationally goes. Like you still have the barriers of capital, different things like that, but it actually opened up markets and segments of markets that really haven't been extremely viable for investors, because if you look at like the smaller the assets go, well, in self-storage, a smaller asset, let's say $800,000, that may still be 100 doors. So you still have a lot of things going on, but you can't employ somebody to be doing it because that expense ratio doesn't make any sense to do it. And so what we've seen is over the last 3 years, when you have a combination of hardware, software that integrate, and you tie in AI to where AI can do the communications, the functionalities, you can now actually run these things and optimize them where before you really couldn't, not in a significant way, because it was so prohibitive on a cost basis. So interesting enough, it's allowing people to get into the market and participate in assets that were cost prohibitive, which I think that's a good thing. That makes a more vibrant part of the market down below. I think that you can get a lot of confusion, though. You're right. So I think the one thing you have is you don't know the individual that's actually going and doing this, right? I think we run into a problem. Do they have skills, or is it generated? Because before it's like, oh, my ideas or what I'm saying, and I'm responding to an email, right? I'm expressing my knowledge, things like that. That may not even come from the person. So literally they may not even know what they're responding to because AI made it, but it comes back and it's a perfect response. You look very knowledgeable. You sound like you know what you're talking about. And I think that should be nerve-wracking to investors.
Oh, and I think that touches on trust, right? Like my biggest thing here is I don't think we're quite at the level where we can trust these AIs implicitly. When you say, I read an article the other day about this where it's talked about a lot in the legal space. So I'm sure Mauricio will have some comments on this, but at some point he will talk about it with his practice. But a lot of people are talking about how it's going to change the legal space and how they're going to need much less manpower for that. But then at the same time, there was a story about someone who wrote a legal brief for oral arguments, and they asked ChatGPT to come up with 3 examples of case law to support this, and then they just submitted it. And when the judge looked into it, ChatGPT literally just made them up. Like it literally, like those examples of case law didn't even exist. And we do see instances of that. If you play with ChatGPT or DeepSeek or Gemini or any of these other things for long enough, you will see scenarios where it's kind of like that guy who can't ever say, I don't know. Like, and they always just make something up. They're going to have instances where they hallucinate, I think is the word that they use it for these things. And so I guess at some point, like, how far do you trust these things? Because there's a difference between automation and artificial intelligence. And I feel like a lot of people, when they're talking about AI, they're actually just talking about automation. And automation's been around for decades, right? Like we've been automating a lot of our processes, especially in property management and all these things. But the difference between automating property management, where we could just say, okay, when someone calls, this process happens, then this, then this, then this, and then you can have it, go through a computer process instead of just being phone calls. The difference between that and AI would actually be taking the calls, and then based on the responses, it would be coming up with its own responses that aren't just prompt response, if this, then that. It would actually be reasoning behind this. And that's when I'm like, I'm still, for a lot of these things, I'm not quite there where I trust it implicitly not to screw up, especially something big. Like if you're talking about pro forma rent projections, where you're talking about doing research on markets and stuff like that, like it's still not quite there in my mind where we're trusting those things for major decisions.
And two, you got to remember, like a perfect example of this is the AI is subject to inputs. So the AI is taking inputs and then it is using, right, more of a thinking method to decide how to analyze these inputs, what to do with it, how to cross, but that he doesn't necessarily know that the inputs are correct. So when you look, if you go underwriting and you're looking at your competition in a market, there's a lot of data scrubbing software systems that produce numbers. But in a lot of these markets, even like mine, a huge segment of those numbers are not correct. They're just wrong. And they're wrong for a lot of reasons, right? They're wrong because you have an operator that just hasn't ever updated their site. Or they're wrong for whatever reason it may be, right? And so you're making now decisions, or an AI is coming up talking about value or something that may be completely off. It's the literal premise of that thought process. So then you have an investor who's making a thesis of something that they didn't really understand. And so they defaulted it to ChatGPT to come up with this investing thesis, but they can't put those dots together. That's why they had ChatGPT do it, right? And so all of a sudden it starts to layer in, where in some cases it can actually, you can layer in problems. Like the problems get worse and worse because you can keep asking AI, oh, make this more, make this better. Even though the premise was wrong, it'll keep going, right? So you do need to, I think, be careful with that stuff.
You kind of have to trust but verify. It's still got that human element to it that, you shouldn't be relying on strictly AI to, write up your contract or review your contract, but you can use it as a starting point. You can use it as an opportunity to say, upload a contract to it and say, what are some things that I should be aware of moving forward?
And two, but like what Rob just said to everybody, he's controlling the input. So, and this is how a lot like what we use AI for. So when we're using AI to analyze, I'm giving data sets. I'm giving numbers that we know where these numbers came from. We know. So what it's doing then is it's analyzing, it's showing trends, correlations, things that we can't plot out. We don't we could, it would just take lots of people. So then we're reducing that manual labor. So we're more efficient and we can see and get good ideas. We know what's being put into it. We also know how those are being drawn. The conclusions, we know how to get there, but I don't want 5 people doing it. So we are controlling those inputs. Like Rob said, you give it a contract. What in this contract puts me at risk that I'm not seeing? Great. You already have the contract, you know it, right? And so for AI, for that stuff is phenomenal. And it makes people that know what they're doing very powerful and dangerous because it's leveraging a skill they already have. And I think that's the difference. Are you leveraging skills through AI that you already have? Like my firm, I don't know how many people we haven't hired because of AI, but I can tell you this, it's a lot. Like the amount of people we don't need to hire because we have AI we can not hire. We don't need to anymore. We used to literally to do the same transactions, we would have had to probably double some of our departments. We don't need to anymore.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of brings me to the second implication, huge implication, has to do with jobs in real estate investing. And so, we always hear the refrain, it's kind of become, is AI going to take my job? And the cliche that we talk about in AI circles is that AI is not going to take your job, but somebody that can leverage and use AI, like you were just talking about, AJ, is going to take your job. And so what's that going to do for our job market moving forward? Are we going to reskill and retrain our workers so that they're competent, at least using some semblance of AI to do these jobs? Or are they just going to...
What do you think? Because I'm actually more optimistic now than if you look at something like Industrial Revolution and stuff. The problem is that it was replacing unskilled labor. But in this case, it seems like AI is replacing more and more skilled labor. than unskilled. The unskilled seem like they're the most stable job market for as far as AI is concerned.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is what we have historically seen is when we've had these technological disruptions that the economy, the workforce has adapted. There's been new roles that have come about. There's been new jobs that have been produced. So I too am of the optimistic set that says, I think we're going to be okay. But what if the bots take over, so to speak, and we get some crazy politician that says now that we have unemployment so high, we need to move to universal basic income or something like that? I mean, that's always a possibility.
I think it's the opposite. I think, and I made a video on this, how I think AI is the one thing that will save us. So if you look at our right now, we have a workforce problem. And that's not the fact that people don't have jobs. And I mean, you see this in the numbers. The economy's not booming, yet jobs. And you're like, okay, well, is the economy just doing so well? We have high unemployment. No, it's because we have every single day tens of thousands of baby boomers, and every single month millions of baby boomers that are retiring.
Oh, you can teach baby boomers how to use AI, right? Baby boomers would be great using AI, don't you think?
They don't want to work. They're done. And then the young people that are coming into the workforce we don't have the population. So we have more people leaving the workforce than entering, and that is escalating. So by 2030 or 33, we have about a $10 million labor gap, a $10 million person labor gap in the United States. And that is including the immigration that we saw over the last few years, because those numbers were before it ended, which was like the highest immigration like we've ever had. The baby boomers retiring is such a major segment of the population. They're also like the really skilled segment of the population because they've just been in that job for so long, right? Or that industry. So they just have all these skills. And I think AI is going to allow us to have a vibrant workforce and allow businesses to stay open and utilize the people in it. Because right now we have a workforce problem. Unemployment is so astronomically low, and it shouldn't be during these economic conditions, right? But you just can't get people. You can't get workers. I think it'll save us.
So what I hear you saying, AJ, is that AI will kind of be our savior for the employment problem. And then on the other side, as we were talking earlier, AI can potentially be our savior for an inflation problem. And as we talk about inflation, stabilizing prices, and as we talk about, on the other hand, maximizing employment, we're talking about the dual mandate of the Fed. So Uncle Jerome Powell, all he needs is AI, and he can handle what he needs to.
Well, is AI going to start paying taxes and paying into Social Security as well, though? I guess
it'll just turn the printing press on and just print away.
We won't even know what's happening, right?
It's going to print our taxes now.
So I guess, is there any, so as far as we are concerned as investors, any real other, like, we can see these shifts and we can adapt our businesses to it. But I guess my biggest holdup so far, I mentioned earlier that we employ a lot of VAs, and it's an easy way for us to automate, but I also trust them more, right? Like I trust them even when they're data scraping and they're pulling the right numbers. And even if you want to be like, if it's something that's super sensitive, something that we do is we have VAs checking VAs, right? Like they check each other. And so like, is it something that's going to, at this moment, the level that we are, is it making our processes better, or is it just making it easier and cheaper? Because the major thing that I've seen is it's just made tools easier and cheaper for us, right? Like it used to be CoStar, you had to pay, $3,000 just to get your foot in the door in CoStar, and now there's other options to CoStar that are giving you similar amounts of data for half or even a quarter of the price. And like there's others like softwares for parsing rent rolls and for doing things like this. We have cheaper access, and it's kind of like the 80-20 thing, right? You can get 80% of the functionality of the big boys that used to be just run the show for about 20% of the cost. So is that really what we're seeing now, or is there real tools out there that are making our our processes better, not just cheaper and more efficient?
So how I look at a lot of it is unseen. So if you take output, so you go any organization, all of the individual inputs that organization has to do to create a monetary output, right? Point 0 to 100. There's all of these different points in communication. There's all of these different processes and systems that have to go into all of this stuff to generate that outcome. Every time you switch hands, every time different people need to look at things and analyze things, you have friction points, right? So there's delays, there's times, one department, you have another, somebody's got to write an email. There's all these little friction points to get to the output. A lot of what I see AI doing is it's taking and it's streamlining things. It's making everything easier to get done, quicker, and it's looking at these processes and saying, oh, we could do it this way, or we could do it that way. So I think it's a lot of little things going into organizations that are allowing them to be more efficient. And
right, they're more efficient and they're cheaper. But I guess that's, to me, that's just still what we've been doing for decades. Is we've just been automating. We've been just making processes more efficient. We've been doing that. Is there something that AI is making better? Because here I'll give you a great example. People talk about like the leasing process, right? We all have to go through it. Doesn't matter what kind of real estate you're in. You have to get people into your property. And with us, where it's apartments, it's constant, right? It's daily. We're having to get, dozens of people through the door, and people have really turned to AI and automation for that, for the whole process. So you could actually get somebody leasing without even a single person talking to them. They could set up an appointment. You can have, codes on the door. You can have facial recognition. You can have all these different things. You go through that. But at the same time, we actually found we were pushing automation, but then we found when we called somebody, when we had an actual person call somebody to set up the appointment, our conversion rate was like 5x, as opposed to this automated process that we were using with the you can call it AI and stuff. So like, it wasn't making the actual process better. It was just making it more efficient and cheaper.
So, but did it make it better for the people that were selling? So we have sales teams out here. We do the same thing. I want to call first call, right? Do it. They're better at their job because of those things. So I think it's like, is it better? Well, first of all, the individuals and leveraging it, right? That actually makes you better data set, better abilities to analyze. And so if you're giving the right person a powerful tool, the outcome is going to be better. Now, I mean, if you're talking like just no people at all, that it replaces a person, is it better? I think that's a totally different way of looking at it or discussion.
Well, and I think too with the talking about sales calls and things like that, you can use the AI. If I'm a sales agent and I'm going to turn on voice mode of ChatGPT and I'm going to type in there in the prompt, okay, you are acting as a hard to sell customer that is going to raise objections. Let's have a conversation that I am trying to sell you, and I want you to be a hard sell for me. And that trains your salesperson to then do that. Now, another thing, Kyle, to what you were talking about in terms of automation and processes, is the next big thing that I think we're going to see on the horizon with AI is what we call agentic AI. And that's just a fancy way of saying the rise of agents. And so the rise of agents would be doing things like, really practical. I want to book a trip to Nashville. Okay. And so you tell the agent to do that. Okay. They're going to explore your airline options, your hotel options, and it's going to make all of those bookings eventually. Now, are they at a place that they can do that now? Absolutely not, right? Who would give your credit card to something like that, right? But eventually that is going to be where it is, and that is going to take that process to a whole different level. That's not just, making it easier and all that, but it's also going to be, saving time and money in so many different ways. So I don't know. It's an interesting time to be alive.
Well, that's a good example too, because it wasn't that long ago, like in my lifetime, where that was the only way you could book flights and hotels was through an agent, right? Like we didn't have access to be able to just go and look this stuff up ourselves. You had to call up a travel agent in order to book your flights and your hotels and your old trips, and like just the process of going through that. Now these travel agents still exist, obviously, but they're few and far between, people are saying that real estate agents are going to go that way now.
Yeah, my thesis, and we've talked about this on this show. It was a long time ago, it was a year or two ago, but my thesis is that, oh, look at that. Rob is drinking out of his drunk real estate mug. I love it. There you go. Hold that up, everybody that's watching. There's the drunk real estate mug. If you do an opening song for us, I'm going to send you a mug. Right. My thesis is that. As we see a more leveled playing field, as AJ was saying earlier, and as Rob was saying earlier, we're going to see the ability for smaller teams, people with less experience, people who don't have the pedigree coming in and being able to do the same thing that the big boys do. They're going to have access to the same information. They're going to have access to the same research. They're going to have access to the same tools to do underwriting. They're going to be able to write the same offers, and basically differentiating between a deal that I'm trying to buy and Blackstone, or again, BlackRock, I forget which one is real estate. They want to go in and buy the same deal. We're going to be competing. It's going to boil down to one thing: cost of capital. They're going to be able to get the same research for every market in the country. Right now, probably the reason, I don't know this for certain, I'm making this up, but I'm guessing the reason they're not competing with me in some of the small towns where I buy real estate is because it's just not worth it for them to have expertise on that small town. But once you have AI and AI agents going out, being able to do the research and determine automatically what offer makes sense, they're going to be able to make offers on the same thing I am. And again, the only thing that's going to determine whether they get the deal or I get the deal is who has cheaper cost of capital. And the big boys are going to have cheaper cost of capital. And so my concern is that moving forward, this is actually going to be a huge advantage for the big players.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I think because for so long, for the mom and pop real estate investor, the fragmented nature of real estate investing, exactly what you're talking about, Jay, being in the small town, knowing the ins and outs of that community, from one street over, the invitation homes and the big institutional investors didn't have that, and that was the advantage of the mom and pop real estate investor. And now they are going to have that because they're going to have the resources, both human and financial resources, to put that AI into play. And I agree with you that, it's going to be a competition now, more competition for the mom and pop or even for the mid-level investor to compete with the institutional investors. So it'll be interesting to watch, to see.
I think too, what you guys bring up is a really good point, because first of all, technology always does this. Like, it disrupts, it comes in, and it can actually fractionalize industries at first. But then what happens is the big boys, they get those same advantages, and then they have the money to buy the innovation. And so what they do is they buy out those competitors and those people that are doing really good. And then they utilize their leverage, which is, like Jay was saying, that cost of capital, to consolidate efficiently ran businesses and shops, and then it rolls up to the top. So technology, even if it disrupts at first, is always a point that lends to consolidation. It always does. So capital, leverage and capital, right, lends to consolidation because, like Jay was talking about, cost of money. Same with technology. Like, the internet came and, now everybody can compete online, right? We can all start up our own stores. We don't need Walmart. Well, guess what happened? All the mid-sized companies went away, and now you just have Amazon. So it actually consolidated everything in Amazon. Even though there was some fractionalization of sellers and how they sell everything else, it still made one mega player, because what they do is they turn it into infrastructure. And the infrastructure of the technology that is made in those industries, we all have to utilize. And so I agree. I think at first it disrupts, it empowers, it increases margins, but then it moves to the next phase and it goes through consolidating, and then we don't get yield. That's what the internet did, right? Like, phase one of the internet was amazing. So the internet phase one, especially through the 90s, was optimization. It made firms boom. It made like a firm like us in the brokerage firm, we could compete with the big boys. Then I started to do roll-up models even smaller than us, but it made access, everything better, right? Then we all got bought up. And because then the companies would pay so much for us. Well, then Internet 2.0, all it was consolidation. All you did was have these big tech companies just buy everything. So it didn't produce anything except social media. So all it did was produce lots and lots of billionaires. It consolidated the internet amongst 5 people. So the actual thing that created the productivity, the fragmentation within the industries, the startups, the everything else, ends up maturing into a consolidation, and it's a winner takes all with technology. And so I think that's what you will see with AI. It'll go that same normal course because AI is a data game. That's what it is. It's a data game. That's it. So whoever has the most data, AI is more powerful. It's simple. The bigger your data sets, the more powerful of an AI you have, right? And so when you look at it, AI doing these functional part of processes, systems, everything else, that's great. But then what happens is, even a company like ours, I'm literally going out and giving services for free, and we're trying to buy up companies just to pull data in so that we can now analyze it and make it more efficient.
I mean, we talked about that before, how like the future of the AI is actually just the data, right? Like people are going to have to start owning their own data. We're still in a stage where a lot of these models work on public data and public access to data. But then all of a sudden, I've always said this, and like if anyone at the Yardi is paying attention, I don't understand why Yardi, CoStar, Axiometrics, these big boys with all their data, like that's going to be their bread and butter. They're focusing on all these other things right now. They're focusing on like building these little offshoot programs and doing all this stuff. Like you just have to focus on like proprietary data. And if you have access to that, people are going to need it in order to train their models and have good models. And to me, that's like we already discussed it before. Like that's where the big business is going to be is selling data. And someone like Google is going to be hand and fist in it. We got to wrap this up. We got to move on to the next stage. But I feel like we can't have a conversation with AI without talking about doomsday with someone who spends a lot of time with AI. So Rob, what is the risk, and what is how many minutes to midnight are we from this? General. What's the general AI intelligence? What's the AIG or whatever it's called?
AGI.
AGI, yeah, super intelligence, yeah.
What likelihood are we at to that point? And if that does happen, are we just screwed, or are we, or is it something we don't have to worry about as much?
Yeah, well, in terms of AGI, first they have trouble defining what it is in the first place, and secondly, you have predictions all around when it's going to happen. Some people are saying 2 or 3 years out. I think they just did one of the latest models to come out past what they call the Turing test, was where they put the computer in front of a bunch of people, and can the people tell the difference between whether it's a computer or a human being? And most of the people could not tell that it was a computer. So I think we're quickly going that way. I think it's going to be very quick. I think we'll reach AGI here in the next 5 years or so, where the computers are smarter than, say, a PhD level person in terms of their knowledge and their ability to reason. When we get to super intelligence, that'll be a whole new thing to get into, and another scary aspect of it. The real part is, if this gets into the hands of bad actors, what if North Korea, let's say, gets this and is able to do something with it, and how do we prevent that? And that's for people a lot smarter than I am in terms of what we need to do to protect all that. But we see it already happening. We have a chips race going on between us and China. And you mentioned DeepSeek earlier. DeepSeek came around, and a lot of people have said that DeepSeek is being funded by China itself as a open model, and that it's China's response to the chip restrictions that the United States has put on in terms of selling those to China. And so, all this could end up in World War III for all that we know. So I'm not sticking my head in the sand and saying, hey, there's no danger. I think we got to be very careful. We need to tread carefully for sure.
Let me just add one thing. You talk about the Turing test, which is whether people can tell if you're talking to a computer or not. Everybody always wants to ask the question, how quickly are computers getting smarter? But we're not asking the question, how quickly are people getting dumber? Because isn't that going to play into it also?
You already see all these guys on these dating sites. They're geting fooled by these bots. And
100%. That's
they think they're
exactly what I was
in
thinking.
love.
That's exactly what I was thinking when I said that. That's so funny.
All right. Well, you mentioned World War III there. I feel like it's a good segue into something else that's been going on. I don't know if you've been paying attention at all, but there's this big, beautiful word, might be the best word in the dictionary, called tariffs. And we would be remiss not to talk about the elephant in the room at this point, because the United States imposed wide sweeping tariffs across the world, from 54% tariffs on China to the minimum of 10%. That's the minimum. So it did everybody was the minimum of 10%, even on an uninhabited island country full of penguins as well. So there are debates as to what the end results of these tariffs will be, but there's no denying what the immediate reactions were, with countries implementing counter tariffs and the stock market plunging nearly 10%, with nothing to do with the jobs report. So AJ, why don't you just give us a quick perspective of what's going on? We'll try and keep this relatively quick.
Yeah, so we talked, what was it, last week, where we were like, well, we're going to announce this, right? The big thing is going to be tariffs, everything. So it came out. It's changing all the time. So by the time this comes out, it's already going to be different. We have how many countries have already now? We've got lumber has been taken out. We've gotten. I mean, it's like they're making exceptions.
I mean, he didn't impose any new tariffs on Canada or Mexico.
Yep.
In that. It was like the only two countries, because he's like, we'll worry about them.
And now we've got. They've met with 6 countries as of now, and Europe came back and said 0. We want to actually go and do no tariffs at all with you. So this is changing so fast by the time it comes out, right? Well, but essentially broad sweeping tariffs against everybody. The only one that's really dug in hard, besides the penguins, was China. And then Trump just came back immediately and was like, all right, we'll go up 50. So the Chinese tariffs as of today are like 100% or something crazy.
But I think that's they're waiting until the 9th, so that we're recording this on the 8th. So it might be as of tomorrow. They might be up to 104%. But actually, I read something very interesting, because here's the thing. The reason that tariffs can be very effective for the U.S. is because we do run a deficit with most countries. When I say, like, most countries that matter, if you look at that sweeping list, all of those 10% countries, it's funny because the way they calculated that tariff thing, they weren't actually tariffs. They were just factoring in our deficit. All of the ones that were 10% were actually countries that we are the opposite. They run a deficit to us. And we couldn't put that they had negative tariffs against us. So he just put 10% as kind of, if you look at the list, you're like, why are there so many 10%? That they actually have, by their calculation, it would have been negative tariffs against us. So they put 10%. But anyway, so the point is that if we put a 54% tariff on China, if they want to put a reciprocal 54% tariff on us, it doesn't really matter, because we import, 5x as much from them as they import from us. So like they're going to feel it a lot more than us. So, but what you're seeing though is actually what China started doing is they realized that they're not going to win that race. So they're starting to do kind of a little bit more guerrilla warfare, right? So they're doing stuff like, what does China have that the US needs, and what does China have that the rest of the world doesn't really have as much? And that's rare earth minerals, right? Like that's one of the big buzzwords these days, rare earth minerals, especially electric cars, silicone chips, all these different things. They all need these rare earth minerals. Well, China does like 90% of them. And so they've actually started doing things like, they didn't straight out block the US from acquiring these, but what they did is they put on the list of, you must get a license in order to import these rare earth minerals from China for all these U.S. firms. So in essence, it's blocking them. And so they're starting to do these kind of other tactics because they realize they can't win a straight up trade war with the US.
Yeah.
And so I just thought that was interesting that like someone like China, where everyone else is going to run to the table and they're just going to try and negotiate something. But he's been really tough with China, and they're having to turn to new tactics on this one.
Yeah. This is a direct attack against two competing world powers. That's what this is.
The top two.
Yes, yes. When you look at all the other countries, you have negotiations. There's some specific things they're going after. They're doing 10. China, though, is the one where it's like meant to hurt. Like it is our competitor, and I believe that's just kind of how they look at it. Like it's no, and then China doesn't want to show weakness. That's a big problem because they're the competing world power. So you can't show weakness. And so they're kind of doing this whole, they also dumped our bonds, or a huge amount of bonds. And
that's a big flip too. Like if you remember the first time, like when we just did those 10% tariffs, and we talked about this on the pod, like China was very meek in their response, right? Like they were kind of like, oh, we're going to, what did Jay say? We're going to tariff chicken feet. And like, it was like, it was kind of like a few things that were not that significant. And oil exports. And like, is energy and chicken feet. But now they're like really like, okay, I guess this is war.
But the problem China has is, for all intents and purposes, China was like almost in a depression. I mean, they have a literal housing, the equivalent of 2008 crisis. Their deficits have been skyrocketing as they try to jumpstart their economy. Their growth has been cut like in half. And they have, you've seen as that's been going on, they've invested a lot more into military, right? And so they're doing all the traditional things that a maturing economy that's slowing down is doing. So the point is, though, they're in the middle of this. Like they're in their economy is moving from this old economy to a maturing economy that's more on par with the big boys right when this is happening. And their finance, like you look at their currency, what's happening with their currency and everything else. So China's in like if you're playing chicken with us, they are in a much worse position. So it makes me wonder how much are they going to dig their heels in? Like, and can they? And how much can they do?
I guess that when it comes down to the country like China, like if you look back at their even like relatively recent history, like they're kind of used to going through tough times. Like their society. And like, it's not like they have a democracy where like, okay, if their administration doesn't do well, they're gone in 3 years.
Yeah. They'll just let the people suffer.
Right. And they're used to suffering versus like we are not. And not only that, like they also have the message of like, they're the oppressed and we're the oppressor. We don't have that message. And so like, I feel like in these situations, you're saying, I keep bringing up Canada, obviously, because being, that my whole family's talks about it, but like Canada's treating like they're under attack. And like you can withstand a lot more suffering as a country if you're banding together and in a solace of like we are under attack right now versus the US right now. If we start seeing our eggs go back up another double in price again, we're going to revolt. So I don't know, like when you say like a game of chicken, I don't know who would win that.
The problem is that commodities are dropping. Because of it's one thing if you slap a 10% tariff on growth, nothing else changes. You're putting tariffs on and you're contracting the worldwide GDPs. So like everything from lumber to feed to eggs to, right, we've got, what else do we got up here? Steel prices to going down. So all of a sudden you're like, yes, tariffs are inflationary, but you know what's deflationary? Recessions and depressions. So all of a sudden, if he's saying this, but yet Americans are like, okay, we may have one or two, but overall things are actually getting cheaper because of not good reasons. Like it's not that they're good reasons they're getting cheaper, but if they're still getting cheaper,
demand, right? demand. Like that's
Yeah,
what, like
demand's
you
gone.
brought up lumber. Like the reason we've been we were in the middle of doing a development, and like, so we're really sensitive to lumber, and lumber actually went down because, to your point, people are fearing recession and demand is going to
Wheat
go down.
prices are a fraction of what they were just 2 years ago. Like, the commodities have gone so far down, and they're getting cheaper. The reversal in the last 4 months has been big.
Here's what I'm still trying to figure out, and I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on the economic stuff, but when it comes to the geopolitical stuff, I'm just an idiot. So I'm making stuff up just like everybody else. I'm not pretending I know anything, but trying to figure out what the end game is here. Because we're hearing lots of different things. We're hearing, okay, this is an opportunity to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. We're hearing this is an opportunity to increase revenue so we can get rid of the income tax. We're hearing this is a way to drop bond rates so we can refinance our debt more cheaply. And so, but the
Or
problem
New
is
World Order, Jay.
All three.
Or national security.
all three.
Yeah, national security. That's a great one.
Yeah.
Good point, Rob. Like to me, that is one of the best reasons for this.
But I feel like we could accomplish okay, separate from that, not knowing if it really is all three. Unfortunately, they're somewhat at odds. So let's take the manufacturing thing. So we want to bring certain manufacturing back to the U.S. But here's the problem: to do that, we need to keep tariffs in place long term, because the reason for tariffs is it makes it cheaper to manufacture in the U.S. If we get rid of tariffs at any point in the future, it now becomes cheaper to import again, and we just revert back to what we were doing. So the only way to do this is actually keeping tariffs in place.
Is the whole reason that there's no oil refineries anymore because the U.S. is trying, like in all these countries are saying we're going away from oil, and oil refineries are a 30-year cycle of making money, and no one's going to build them, right? So like it's the same thing to your point. No one's going to build in the U.S. if they think the tariffs are going to just go away.
Yeah, and so it's hard for me to buy that argument that it's going to bring manufacturing back. I love the argument, or not even love the argument, but I love the idea of using tariffs to bring the important stuff back: pharmaceuticals, weapons, electronics, chips. Those are the things that are important to national security. But to put a tariff on cheap plastic crap from China, as I like to refer to it, I just see no value there, because we're never going to make that less expensive than China does. And there's no reason for us to even try. And so we're basically just building trade barriers and creating trade wars for no reason. The whole idea
I think they're pushing it, though, because you're right in China, but Mexico, they can do it. So like, I think that's a lot of it is like literally, once again, just to hurt China. It's like, we may not even take it on. We want it to go elsewhere.
Yeah, and so then you look at the whole as an opportunity to lower yields so that we can refinance our debt. The problem is, I mean, we can take the very simplistic view of you crash the stock market and bonds come down. That's great, except that's not the reality. The reality is, if you crash the stock market on purpose, people don't buy bonds. We had the first treasury sale of bonds today since tariffs went into place, and it was a very weak auction. Nobody wanted to buy bonds because everybody's like scared to buy U.S. debt. Then you have
the 10-year treasury went all the way back up too. We were down below 4 there, guys.
That's because China sold off the bonds. So China sold off all the bonds and flooded the market.
Well, that's part of it. It's that people aren't buying bonds. Our currency is being devalued. Our currency is dropping. The value of the dollar is dropping, which is going to make it less incentivized to buy U.S. debt. The other thing is that normally the reason why we see you take money out of the stock market, you put it into bonds, and bonds go down, is because we normally see large investors moving money out of the stock market first. And large investors are going to take that money and they're going to put it into bonds. The problem is small investors, Kyle, I'm not saying you're a small investor, but if you have a 401k and you're taking $2,000 out of your 401k out of the stock market, you're not going to go out of your way to move that into bonds. You're just going to leave it sitting in cash. And these days we have so many mom and pop investors that are moving small amounts of money out of the stock market that they're just doing the easiest thing. They don't understand putting money into bonds, how bonds work. So they just leave it in cash. And so we're not getting that demand for bonds because money's moving out of the stock market. And so I think the whole idea that crashing the stock market to reduce bond rates just isn't viable. The whole idea of we're doing it to raise revenue. So I think it was Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, who was saying that we're going to raise $700 billion a year in new income from tariffs. Well, are we really going to do that long term? That's a tax hike. It's businesses and U.S. consumers that are paying that $700 billion. And so do we really want to put a $700 billion tax hike on U.S. businesses and consumers long term? If the answer is yes, that's great. But let's just do a tax hike and not start a global trade war. I mean, there are easier ways to put a tax hike on businesses if the goal is just to raise revenue. And so my long story short is I keep hearing all these reasons why we're doing this. None of them kind of make sense to me on their face. Maybe there's something I'm missing, but I just feel like it would be so much better if the administration would come out and say, here's our end game. And if it's secret, great. Then say, look, it's secret. We're not telling you, but
They've been very open. Bassett had a whole interview where he talked with Fox News, and he went through, and it was the three categories. He's like, we're using tariffs to raise money, right? We're using them to try to protectionism. We want to protect our industries, right? All that kind of stuff. And then he was very open about it. We're using it to
negotiate better deals.
And like,
but I feel like they're okay, maybe they're telling us, but they're also lying to us about a lot of things. We've been hearing for months, it's all about we're being treated unfairly and we want the same tariffs on us as we have against them, vice versa. We want zero tariffs, whatever it is. But over the last couple of days, what we keep hearing is it's not about tariffs at all. It's about trade imbalances. And I think it was Bessent that went on Fox News today or yesterday and said, it was Peter Navarro who went on Fox News and who said, no, zero tariffs for both sides. That's not enough. We need equal trade. We need to get rid of the trade imbalance. And so suddenly we've gone from it's about tariffs to now it's about we can't have a trade deficit with these other countries. And
well, I think it's about both, though. I don't think those are exclusionary. I think because one doesn't mean you don't have, there's a lot of reasons to do these things. And I don't think because we have one, that doesn't mean the other one doesn't exist. I'm not saying I'm for it. I'm saying what they've stated, though, and their approach to it is kind of that multi-tiered thing where they've been very open. They talked about it, which I think some's short-sighted at best. But really, I think too, the overall revenues they can drive, which at first, to be honest, I was like, that is ridiculous because of the cost. Now I'm actually going, well, I guess all the prices are going down. So because you're tanking the economy. So all of a sudden, if prices are going down, yet they're getting tariffs from it, the consumers aren't getting hurt. In fact, it's helping them. And we're raising capital. That's interesting. The yields on the bonds went up today. We'll see if they come back down, though. But overall, slow economic growth will drive people to bonds. So I think, if we look at it and say, okay, maybe that'll work, maybe it'll not. We'll see what the market will do. But then the negotiation part, which that's clearly working because people are reaching out to him, which I think that's more of a driver for Trump than it is other people in the administration because that's how he does things. Like, I'm just going to nuke you, and then if you don't want it, then come back to me now and beg for mercy and I'll get what I want, kind of thing. So the bully approach. So I think it's a mix of those, which I agree with you. Like, some of them are very short. We're not going to compete in some areas. We're just not. And we don't want to. We don't want to. And two, by the way, a deficit's okay. It's not bad that we have deficits. That's not a bad thing. It sounds bad because we say deficit, but it's not a bad thing if we're getting what we want.
Warren Buffett has the best quote. I have a deficit. I run a deficit with my dentist. I pay him lots of money. He never pays me anything.
Yeah. Now there's other things that is like, okay, manufacturing stuff could come back. I mean, we have steel and aluminum. So until this, I didn't realize we have these plants that we're really not utilizing. So as of right now, we can increase in the United States our steel and aluminum production massively, but yet we're buying it cheaper overseas that are literally discounted. And yet automotive parts, aerospace and defense, industrial equipment, and some textiles, we have infrastructure. Things like consumer electronics, pharmacies, semiconductors, solar batteries, we don't have infrastructure for that. So even if we wanted that, if we said, all right, we want solar batteries or consumer electronics to be built in the United States, we actually have to build the infrastructure to get that. You don't flip on a light switch. It doesn't work that way, right? But there's other industries that actually they're literally sitting around, not at full capacity. So it seems like that should have been obviously done more.
What if we're getting too granular on this? And I think it's more along the lines of like someone like Trump will look at the entire world and probably as a, you know, like a stoplight system where like we have like green are our friends and we do a lot of trade with them. We like them. They're, you know, NATO members, all these people. Yellow, where they're kind of just like, okay, maybe they're third world countries. We do some trade. We don't really care. And then red, we have like China and we have like, you know, North Korea and Russia and like and things like that where we're probably would be considered adversaries with. But if you look in general, like what do we provide the world and what does the world give back to us, right? And we basically, as a country, we keep the entire world economy afloat. We keep it running. We provide it liquidity. We have all the systems. We run all the systems. We make sure all of that's, we have all the repos, reverse repo. We make sure that everything in the world economy is running. And we also world police that too. Everything that's shipped around, we provide military support for all that. We do all of these things for all of the countries all over the world. And all they do is sell shit to us.
And our taxpayers front the cost of that.
There's not a single country on the planet that wouldn't trade places with us if they could have the reserve currency. You talk about we have to do all this stuff, but we get the greatest benefit. The benefits we get so far outweigh those things that you just mentioned that any country on the planet would trade places with us if they could have the world's reserve.
But they're not
currency.
us, and they can't. That's not even an option, so it doesn't matter.
And that's my point. I'm just talking about the fact that we are in a better position than they are. Just because there are these negatives, we have to provide.
But it's cost our taxpayers astronomical amounts to have these things. I mean, the world defense, us policing the literal world and everything, this is not free. And I think it worked when we were a growing economy where our economy was just booming and we could just get cheaper, more productive. We had a full labor force and we could discount and we could pay for all of these things as we went to other countries and took out. That made perfect sense, right? And it was like, okay, it's better, but that's not our country anymore. We're not a country that was back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. We're just not there. So that cost now with our debt, everything else, the problem is that mode of operating is not only not working for the United States because the consumers aren't benefiting anymore from it. They're not getting more today, yet our costs are still rising. And I think that's the problem.
Here's my biggest fear from all of this. And again, I'm not a geopolitical strategist. I'm making this shit up. But my biggest fear is that the damage has already been done. That we may have every country on the planet come back to us willing to negotiate, willing to give whatever we ask, to give into every demand we have, short term. But at the same time, they know that we are erratic. We know that we may do crazy stuff in the future. And so short term, they're going to tell us, yeah, whatever you want, we'll give it to you. But at the same time, they have started or they will start negotiating lateral and regional trade agreements with others and start to reduce their reliance on the U.S. for exports, start reducing reliance on the U.S. for their imports, and start trading with each other. And if they're going to start to cut us out, eventually that's going to be much, much more painful for us than it will be for them. And everybody says, The US has the biggest economy in the world. There's nobody that's even close. That's true. But when you put everybody else together, their economies are more than 3 times the size of ours. And so, yes, we can beat any other country, but we can't. It's the bully that, nobody can beat up the bully, but everybody can get together, and together they can beat up the bully.
But the problem with that analysis is you're assuming that the other countries aren't being sold to. They already are. So if you take a country like Canada, they're already selling to other countries, and we still make up 75%. So like if we leave, they just lose 75% of their economy. They don't make it up selling to others because they already are.
Let me use an example. So up until 3 weeks ago, it would have been absolutely unheard of for China, Japan, and South Korea, because of their political contentions, because of their geopolitical issues, for them to be discussing a trade agreement. The 3 countries just don't get along, and they've never discussed regional trade amongst themselves. 3 weeks ago, they started talking about how they're going to put together a trade agreement, a lateral trade agreement between the 3 countries. That's huge. I mean, that's $200 billion worth of of not just GDP, but of trade between those 3 countries. We're basically helping other countries that never would have worked together form alliances because they are scared of working with us. Canada and China is another great example. Canada and China haven't historically worked together because Canada's had the US. But with all this happening, Canada is now working with China. And so all of these countries, I agree with you that in the old world order, that there isn't enough trade to make up for what we have in the US. But if countries that weren't previously working together decide that they're willing to put aside their political differences for economic benefit, we could get marginalized. And again, I'm making this up. I don't have any data that supports that, but I mean, that's what I would be concerned about if I were running this country.
So it's a little bit like with the monetary, with the dollar. We had the BRICS nations. And so what you're suggesting, Jay, is that there'll be something better than that with even more cooperation. The BRICS nations really haven't amounted to much besides a lot of bluster about, attacking the dollar. But, here with these nations that typically weren't partners before, maybe partnering. But, as I've listened, Jay, I'm a little surprised that you haven't been a little bit harder on these tariffs, and particularly with inflation. Last Friday, Jerome Powell was here in Virginia, up in Arlington, and he mentioned that with these tariffs, that they were going to be, when it comes to inflation, immediate and persistent.
Yep.
And as you just hear the media, it's almost like a foregone conclusion that inflation is going to go sky high, and that we're going to be in a tough spot because of this. So I'm just wondering what you guys are thinking about what all this is going to do to inflation in the near term. I kind of think Jerome Powell talked about in the Biden administration that the inflation after COVID and feeding all the money into the monetary system was going to be transitory. My belief is that these tariffs, if any inflation comes, it's going to be transitory because it's a one and done type thing.
Yeah, but Powell already used up that word.
Yeah,
he can never say that word again. He's never allowed to say it again because
he's saying it's being persistent. I'm saying it's going to be transitory.
Right, but when it does come back with a vengeance, which it will, if these tariffs persist, I don't think there's anybody who argues other than maybe the administration themselves that it will lead to higher inflation. And Powell's kind of up a creek in that situation because what do you do? Like he would probably, if it weren't for the inflation for this, we would be for sure dropping doing a quarter point at least in June. But can he do that if all of a sudden we start getting 3-4 handles on inflation? I don't know if he can. So
I'll take the other side of it. They are inflationary. So tariffs are. That's just what they do, right?
So by the way, the market has priced in a 50-50 chance, right about 50-50, 51-49 right now, that we'll see a rate cut in 28 days. The next time the Fed.
Jay, did you check out last week for a brief moment? That was in the 90s.
Yeah.
And then it came all the way. It seemed like now this is like this new week is kind of leveled off a little bit, but that was up in the 90s. Everyone was panicking that recession is here. And now, as you could see, like everything, the 10-year bumped back up. The chances of a cut went way back down. But
I think, though, if we continue what we see, so there's two arguments here. First of all, tariffs are inflationary, but they're still basic supply and demand. So at the same time, when you see commodities dropping because demand is evaporating, if they're outpacing anything that's, that impact, especially on core, then you don't get that effect, right? So it's true they're inflationary unless you destroy the world's economy and aggregate demand drops, and then everything is so cheap, it's not inflationary at all. In fact, it's a deflationary event. Why? Because what you're doing is you're destroying demand. And so it can be very deflationary. If you say, I'm going to put a tariff on something, and everybody's like, I can't buy it now. And the countries are like, we're not going to trade. That gets deflationary quick, because all of a sudden, if you
let's not pray for that, because that will probably be reflected in rents as well. And
I'm not saying it's good.
Aren't going to deflate. Our banks aren't going to deflate our mortgage payments along the way either. So
yeah, I just to put a finer point on it, I think Powell is going to be in a really tough, potentially, not necessarily, but potentially in a really tough spot over the next couple months, because I mean the Fed has two jobs. One is to keep inflation down, and two is to keep employment up. And so if we see inflation going up, what you would normally do is you raise interest rates. But raising interest rates is going to be really bad for employment, and vice versa. So the Fed, Powell,
and employment's been sneaking. It's been sneaking.
Well, and not just employment. I mean, if GDP comes in bad at the end of this month, Powell seems to have enough animosity towards Trump that if Powell has to choose between what's happening with tariffs, like just the inflation from tariffs, or unemployment, he would choose unemployment.
Well, you could always just blame tariffs, right? Like he could just be like tariffs.
He could just say, this is Trump's fault, and I'm not going to.
He could try and say transitory again. We'll see how
that goes.
Yeah.
I was going to say, the problem is if it becomes clear that this is no longer just Trump's fault, if GDP is down and unemployment is up and all these things are happening independent of the stock market going down. I mean, the stock market is not the economy.
At this point, it's still not Trump's fault. This is just Biden's economy just working its way through.
We have a recipe for we've been hearing the S word thrown around from time to time. Mm-hmm. We're going to have stagflation.
Well, you have two administrations now that are working against the Fed. Biden was spending, $4 trillion a quarter, over, and you had Fed and the Powell's literally like, oh, what am I supposed to do here? Like, I'm literally rising interest rates. We're reducing the money supply, and you're exactly making up for it with government spending. Then he's like, okay, now we got Trump. The markets are like, yay, we're going to cut out government spending. And he's like, I'm going to give a 50% tariff on everything. Now we're increasing all the price of goods and everything. And he's sitting here going, you guys are fighting against me. Like,
at least he's probably thinking it's been a nice reprieve for the last month and a half that he's not in the news every single day. Cause like we were going through, he was every single day, it was like the lead up into, and Powell's face every single day. You would see an article with Powell's face on it, and he's not seeing it yet, but we will. Like I guess that's the thing, is it's coming, unless. So I'm going to wrap this up with, I think Jay's been jonesing to talk about this, and I think we're going to talk about it next episode, unless this administration is just smart like a fox and they're not playing their hand, and they have a couple aces up their sleeve, and this is just a ploy to get a new Bretton Woods agreement. I've seen a lot of people talking about this right now, that this is just you have to do this to everybody so that everyone will come to the table, and everyone will come to the same table. And we're basically going to be like, are you with us? Or are you against us? And people are going to have to, I don't want to get into it, but in the case of this to happen, we need to devalue our dollar. There's a few things that have to happen, and they're lining up right now. So maybe we'll talk about that next week, but there is a chance that Like we already know that some of these tariffs are just a negotiation tactic and they could just go away. And in that case, we don't really have to worry about it. It was just kind of a temporary thing. But I think it's worth exploring the fact that maybe the end game is more of a total end game than just, as Jay was mentioning, okay, the end game's different for China than it is for Canada, than it is for Europe, than it is for their different tactics for each one. Good agreement, Jay?
Yeah, I've wanted to talk about that for a few weeks, and so let's do it.
Cool. You know what the best part
Of waking
about
up.
not having Mauricio here is that I can just do this top 10 and I don't have to feel any animosity against it. And so I could just do whatever one I want. And I did think about saying the top 10 episodes that of our podcast and then just listing the ones that Mauricio wasn't in. But I'm not going to be spiteful like that because I did see a pretty funny article and I want to talk about it.
Hold on one second, Kyle. I have a caller that is coming in that wants to talk. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Actually, I wouldn't put that past Mauricio to do that to one of you guys.
Like, oh, I'm not letting that go.
That would have been hilarious.
That would have been great if he played both sides at it. But there in history, there have been scenarios where people had to get around things like tariffs and trade embargoes and sanctions and things like that. And so trade didn't stop. Trade just got a little bit weird. And so I went through a list, and I'm going to say the top 5 weirdest trade deals in history. So I'll start this off by saying I'll start this off with a lighthearted one. A lighthearted one is zoos in the U.S.
Kyle getting traded to Hershey from. Oh, sorry.
Actually, I did get traded quite a few times. The good one actually was when I was playing in Syracuse, New York, and I got traded to Anaheim. Weather-wise. All right, zoos in the U.S. are prohibited from buying zoos, like a zoo.
Oh, zoos. Okay, I thought you were just being derogatory towards Jews there for a second. I was about to be insulted.
Jay turns off his
Jay's going to get Kyle canceled here really quick.
Okay, zoos.
Jay only becomes a Jew when he wants to be offended.
Yeah,
So zoos in the U.S. are prohibited from buying and selling endangered animals without a hard-to-obtain permit. It's apparently a big thing. But a loophole that they found is there's nothing prohibiting them from trading endangered animals. So apparently they do it all the time, to the point where the last one that I saw, the one zoo traded 800 mackerel for 12 puffins. So apparently that's just a thing.
Puffins got the better side of that deal.
Yeah, they deal in endangered animals as far as trade things. Another great one between the Thai government and Lockheed Martin. And you'd think this is back in the 1930s or something. No, this was in 2005. 2005, Lockheed Martin and the Thai government made a deal for fighter jets in exchange for frozen chicken. The quote from the Thai government was, "They both have wings and they can both fly," when they were asked in comment. So that was an interesting one. Sticky rice from Thailand. This is back in 1996. The Indonesian Aviation Company. They traded 2 cargo planes for 110,000 metric tons of sticky rice. And sticky rice is pretty good though. There's something different about that sticky rice than just white rice. It makes everything a little bit better. All right, we'll go down. The last one's awesome, so I'll skip. I'm gonna leave that one to the end. Zimbabwe.
Can I guess the last one?
You can guess it after this one. Zimbabwe, one of the world's leading tobacco producers, in 1987, it traded cash crop for computers. So it did a swap for tobacco and a crop of computers. That's how they got their computers there. And then the final one, you want to make a bet, AJ?
Is that France sold a carrier to Brazil for coffee beans?
That wasn't that. I didn't put that on the list because I already had carriers. Like I didn't want to do too many of the same like stuff for basically large weapons.
It's their only aircraft carrier that they ever had, and they traded for coffee beans.
So this one, it was apparently like the largest deal. PepsiCo, 1990, did a $3 billion deal with the USSR to swap Pepsi, so Pepsi concentrate, for a combination of vodka, 17 submarines, a cruiser, a frigate, and a destroyer. So there you go.
So maybe the U.S. government should have Pepsi like defending us.
Exactly.
And apparently, so like it was the USSR. A lot of these were on the list were the USSR because like sanctions and stuff like that, and they had to get around them. And Pepsi apparently, like Pepsi did a lot of deals, a lot of different ones. Pepsi could have had the whole top five. They're very they'll take anything apparently in exchange for Pepsi. So there you go. Jay, you got any hypothetical situations? If not, I have one.
I have one that I just thought of.
Okay.
And it's going to be a little different for the three of you. AJ, 200 million, but you and your family have to move to France, and you can never leave the country.
Oh, no.
France.
No. The French? Oh.
That's why I picked France for AJ. Okay, Kyle. This one's
I'd
yours.
do it.
50 million.
50. Ooh. Okay.
Now listen, 50 million. There's a catch here. You and your family have to move to Greenland. You can never leave the country, but if Greenland becomes part of the U.S., you can come back.
That's true. I wouldn't subject my family to that. I'll subject things like where I'll take it on the chin for myself. But 50 million is not enough. Like to me, in order to move somewhere like Greenland, you need enough money to create like your own little city.
But again,
like
if you trust Trump that it's going to become a U.S. territory, you can come back to the U.S.
Yeah, I would take the 200 million to live in France, though. Je parle un peu de français.
That's why I didn't give you that one. Okay, Rob, 50 million, Australia.
Oh yeah, mate.
Yeah.
I'd probably go for a couple million.
That's right.
Australia is beautiful. I mean, I've never been there, but I've been told. I had this other one, so I'll put it to Jay first. Like, what is something that like you've had the same person do for you for a super long time? So I'm thinking like hairdresser, haircut. Yeah. Like you've had the same person do that for the long time.
Pretty sad given how it looks, right?
AJ, do you have someone like that? Like you the same mechanics done in your car, or like something you've done to the same? I assume you have.
Yeah, I eat at the same place, pretty consistently. We get.
So what would you say would be the toughest one for you to switch?
Oh man, that's a good question because I have a lot of those things.
So like Jay, would it be tough for you to switch like a haircut place?
There have been times in my life where I used to fly from California back to Maryland to get my haircut.
Rob, what about you? You got something? You got one of those? You got a mechanic or something?
Mine would be my mechanic for sure.
So here's the question, Jay. If you found out that the owner of your haircutting place was racist, would you stop going?
The person that cuts my hair or the owner of the place?
Well, the person who cuts your hair. Would you stop going?
No, I would not.
That's where it comes down.
Hey, how
AJ,
racist are we talking about?
Yeah.
Like, are we talking like Southern racist, like Texas kind of racist? Or are we talking like real racist?
As long as I don't have, as long as it never, I have to, as long as I don't have to hear it, like I just know it's there, but I never hear it. I think
so I would say it comes out
like
that you
grandpa racist, or is this like
it's not that they're like talking about it all the time, but like they make random comments when you're in a conversation with them, and you're like, "Geez, I didn't realize that my hairdresser is racist."
I'm staying.
You're staying?
Yeah.
Rob, what about you? Would you leave your mechanic?
Oh, that's a hard one. But I think I'm going to stay.
Kyle's like, I'd give him a bigger tip.
Pay raise.
I'd invite him to poker. No, it's funny because I saw this as a post and I immediately thought of I've been going to the same hairdresser for a long time, and it's not like I wouldn't ever leave her, but she's, if you've ever heard of the phrase Delco, like she's such a Delco, like it's a Philly thing where like I would say Delco's kind of like your real like rough Italian kind of ideas. You know what I mean? Like they're like when you think of someone who's like a rough Italian, that's kind of like similar to the Delco. My hairdresser's the same way, where she's real Delco, real principled, real like, you know, if she told me that she killed somebody on the way to work and that she called her cousin and he buried the body for her, like I would believe it. And so then I thought about it, I was like, there's a chance she might be, and we just never come up in conversation. But I feel like everyone's got skeletons. If you dig far enough on everybody, it's just people are hiding better than others. And like I love like AJ, like, but at some point, like if I dug far enough, they would find something that I hated about him, and I just choose not to dig, and you're going to overlook it.
So I hate to bring out AJ's skeletons, but I've heard him say really negative things about Canadians.
Right. And
all the time. And also, though, Canadian shows are my favorite.
and I also heard that he, when he was younger, he did some soaking and broke his Mormon religion. So.
Oh, that wasn't a thing, unfortunately, back then.
Oh, no. Yeah, you would have anyway, right? All right, let's do some plugs. Let's finish this up. It's been long enough. Jay, what do you got? You got any plugs for us?
I'm going to let Rob go first. He's our guest.
Well, I don't want to put him on the spot. I wanted to give him some time in case he wanted to think about what his plug was.
I was going to like reiterate whatever he said. So I was going to.
You ready? You ready, Rob, with a plug?
I'm ready. So I'm going to plug my blog, AIRealestateNavigator.com, AIRealestateNavigator.com.
Navigated, so, like ED on the end?
Oh, Navigator.
Navigator. Got it.
AIRealestateNavigator.com.
Can you subscribe to that? Can I get it in an email?
I don't have it set to email. If you have an RSS feed, you can set it up on an RSS feed.
Yeah, I do have an RSS feed, actually. I am relatively tech savvy. I can do that. Nice. Jay, you going to reiterate that, or you got something else?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with if you guys have never heard of AIRealestateNavigator.com.
I heard that's awesome.
Yeah, it's
I heard about that recently. Yeah.
Yeah. So AIRealestateNavigator.com. Check it out.
Oh, nice, cool looking website too. Jay just pulled it up. Very I Am Robot got going on there. AJ, what do you got for a plug?
Still the YouTube channel. It's still cooking. Go check it out. We got a whole bunch of stuff on there where Alex is.
I didn't realize you were cooking on there too. I got to go check it out again. That'll be interesting.
That's right.
What's the name? Throw it out again.
AJ Osborne. I think that's what it is. AJ Osborne on YouTube. So yeah, go check that out. And it's the channel itself may be self-storage income, but it's under. I think it's AJ Osborne. Yeah,
it's AJ Osborne.
Okay.
Yeah. Perfect. If you Google it, it comes up as one of the top results.
I should probably learn the name to my own YouTube channel if I'm going to pitch it.
I mean, you know your name, right? It's not under Austin, right? No, I'm not going to plug Conference Connect. I'm going to go back to plugging my wife. I think I just heard her walk in the door, so it's perfect timing. Plug my wife. Check her out. Badass Investor on YouTube, Badass Investor on Instagram. And follow Jay. Hopefully very soon we'll have something for you guys if you're into investing in real estate, which I hope you are if you're listening to this podcast. So follow Jay. Hopefully we got something going on soon. That's all I got. Rob, dude, appreciate it, man. Thanks. We've been trying to get an AI real estate podcast going for a while. You kind of just fell into our lap. Well, you kind of jumped into our lap, but we recognized you were there. Got excited, and yeah.
You landed on our lap and we got so excited.
I don't know what that has to do with lap dancing, but it's just getting too far over there. But hey, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
It was great. We appreciate you coming out. We had a lot of fun, even though you didn't drink. But you're still much better than Mauricio. So anytime, we'd love to have you back. Good looking mug. Yeah, great episode, guys. Appreciate it. We will have Mauricio back, I think, next week. We're gonna have him back. So the gang's gonna be back together, and we will see you next Thursday.